The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Do you feel like these are unfair questions of somebody within a department of that size and scope?
I
Do you feel that it's somewhat unfair?
You have a particular thing you really want to talk about and you're asking me other questions, but I don't think it's unfair to ask me about the audit. It's absolutely the case that the United States military should be able to pass an audit, and we've got to be on that pathway to get there.
But don't you think that that does speak to the larger point that we're trying to get at, which is good journalism uncovers corruption? And
okay, good journalism does uncover corruption, but I'm not sure these two things are linked. An audit is not.
But they are.
Okay, so you need to explain to me, do you understand what an audit does and the degree to which it is linked to the question that you're asking?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Hope you had a nice weekend. Okay, I wanted to start off by playing the clip from Jon Stewart and a sit-down he did with Kathleen Hicks, and she was the Deputy Secretary of Defense. So again, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and so she's literally the number 2 person at the Department of Defense. And she was appointed in 2021. So this is a Biden administration appointee. So this was the clip that she did with Jon Stewart. And I did want to go through it. I'll try to maybe interject a few things here and there. But overall, this kind of feeds into this discussion we've had about this DOGE and weeding out waste, fraud, and abuse. But at the same time, is it shady what Elon's doing? Like, does he have too much access? We'll get into that more in a bit, but I don't remember if I ever played this before, but it's a really interesting interview because she's so defensive. And again, what Jon Stewart is saying is that the fact that they can't pass these audits means there's corruption. And then she's really trying to say, no, just because we can't pass an audit, that doesn't mean there's corruption. They're two different things.
I believe so.
Okay, go ahead. Give me your explanation.
No, I don't mind learning. So what I would suggest is...
By the way, this will be my last interruption for a little bit. Unfortunately, through just the audio, you can't see her body reactions and you can't see her verbal cues and all that, or her nonverbal cues, I should say, and all that. But she's incredibly nervous, defensive, and I think it'll actually come through, even through the way she talks about it. But you could tell it for sure was something that, is making her uncomfortable talking about it.
That the audit that they have in the military doesn't really look at whether or not there's efficacy. It's just whether they got delivered the thing that they ordered. And
that is any audit. That is any audit. That is true.
But generally, those audits aren't $400 billion for Raytheon and $1.7 trillion for a plane that doesn't seem to be doing. There is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse within a system.
Audits and waste, fraud, and abuse are not the same thing. So let's decompose these pieces.
Please educate me on
Sure.
What
so an audit is exactly what you just described, which is, do I know what was delivered to which place?
Right.
The ability to pass an audit or the fact that the DoD has not passed an audit is not suggestive of waste, fraud, and abuse. That is completely false right there. So
what is
now is a question of it's suggestive that we don't have an accurate inventory that we can pull up of what we have where. That is not the same as saying we can't do that because waste, fraud, and abuse has occurred.
So in my world, that's waste.
How is that waste?
If I give you $1 billion and you can't tell me what happened to it, that to me is wasteful. That means you are not responsible. But if you can't tell me where it went, then what am I supposed to think? And when there has been reporting, this is not, I'm not saying this is on you and that you caused this, but I think it's a tough argument to make that.
I'm pretty sure I didn't cause it.
All right, again, sorry. I'm trying not to interrupt for once, but she's just so uncomfortable, and like she's like, I'm pretty sure I didn't cause it, and she gives like a little bit of a giggle. And I will say, I give Jon Stewart a lot of credit, because I feel like he's pretty calm in this, and really he's just trying to say, hey, listen, you guys have an $800 billion fiscal budget every year, and you're not passing audits. And by the way, the Department of Defense has failed every audit since 2002. How crazy is that? Like, how do you fail every single one for so long? And so anyway, all right, let's listen to the rest of this, and then I'll tie this into the whole DOGE stuff.
An $850 billion budget to an organization that can't pass an audit and tell you where that money went, like, I think most people would consider that somewhere in the realm of waste, fraud, or abuse, because they would wonder why that money isn't well accounted for. And especially when they see food insecurity on military bases, and they see...
You want to talk about that? Because that's a good... we should be talking... I mean, well, I'm trying to understand where you're trying to go, other than the dollars, which really bother you.
I think it doesn't really bother me. I think it's all connected.
Okay.
I think
tell me that story. Tell me how you're thinking about that.
When I see a State Department get a certain amount of money and a military budget be 10 times that, and I see a struggle within government to get people like more basic services, and then that department that got that, I mean, we got out of 20 years of war, and the Pentagon got a $50 billion raise.
All right, let me just add a little color to this. So basically what happened is, when we pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021, and remember, this is that 20-year war in Afghanistan, the forever war. We've talked about this 100 times. But when that happened, you would think all that money that was going to Afghanistan, okay, we don't need to send that anymore. So the budget should be reduced by that. Instead, he's right. The Pentagon's budget for the Department of Defense increased $50 billion when we no longer needed any of that money, however many billions that were going to Afghanistan. But what ended up happening, he doesn't talk about this, but that's when the war with Ukraine started. And so that's when the money kind of like shifted from sending to Afghanistan to sending to support the war with Ukraine.
Like, that's shocking to me. Now, I may not understand exactly the ins and outs and the incredible magic of an audit, but I'm a human being who lives on the earth and can't figure out how $850 billion to a department means that the rank and file still have to be on food stamps. Like, to me, that's fucking corruption. I'm sorry. And if that blows your mind, and if you think like that's like a crazy agenda for me to have, I really think that that's institutional thinking, and that it's not looking at the day-to-day reality of the people that you call the greatest fighting force in the world. So I get back to this idea of like, I'm not looking to pick a fight with you, but I am surprised at that the reaction to these questions are, you don't know what an audit is, bucko. Like, that's just weird to me.
All right, so there was a little bit left in that, but I cut it out. So again, I mean, here is where the rubber's going to meet the road, in my opinion, when it comes to Elon Musk and this DOGE, Department of Governmental Efficiency, whatever. And that is, is he going to basically scrutinize the hell out of the Department of Defense, the DoD? The biggest line item budget in America is our defense budget. We spend, it's really going to approach $1 trillion a year is allocated towards defense. And why it's important, or why I'm going to be critical of Elon is one of the top 5 defense contractors. So through his SpaceX and who knows what else, even Tesla to an extent, all of his businesses are absolutely affiliated and tied to the DoD defense budget. And so if he scrutinizes the hell out of that and shows us that, hey, there's waste, fraud, and abuse taking place in the department that basically pays him hundreds of millions of dollars for governmental contracts. That's legit. That's legit. But I don't know. I don't know if he might do it, but I will say he's not going to completely like bite off his own nose to spite his own face. But regardless, he's going to have to dig into the DoD because there's enough people that understand how big those departments are, or that department is, and there's enough people that understand the waste, fraud, and abuse, like we just listened to in this Jon Stewart interview with Kathleen Hicks, that they're going to call him out on it. It's funny. I thought to myself, like, it would be a strategic move to bring somebody like Jon Stewart into the Elon DOGE world, and now you could work together, two sides that necessarily might not always agree, but they seem to agree that there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. Maybe I'll try to like start that online and see if it gets any traction. It's like, make Jon Stewart part of part of DOGE. That'd be interesting, because I think Jon Stewart does not like Elon, and like there's definitely criticism from him there. So anyway, all right, there's that. Next up, I want to play this montage of clips because, ironically, even before I saw this montage, I noticed this myself, and this is really part of that narrative creation that we've talked about a few different times, and it really shows you that. And again, this is going to be on the Democrat side, but the same thing does happen on the Republican side, and I'll try to point that out, as well. And that is that they get a certain narrative, and I guarantee you they distribute that narrative to everybody, and everybody is then told to talk about that. If you remember, during the election, there was the Tim Walz calling him the happy warrior. Remember, I played those series of clips where everybody's like, Tim Walz, happy warrior, happy warrior. There was also the campaign of joy on the Kamala side. It's like, she's bringing back joy. She's bringing back joy. And all of a sudden, you heard everybody talk about joy. Well, here is what they're talking about now.
If he intends to ignore what the courts say, this country will potentially find ourselves in a constitutional crisis.
That is a constitutional crisis. That is a crisis for our democracy.
Most serious constitutional crisis.
Clearest sign that we might be creeping towards a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, it's a constitutional crisis.
Basically, we're in a constitutional crisis, even though there isn't a complete, clear definition.
It's a constitutional crisis.
Suggests that they are on the cusp of a constitutional crisis.
Democrats to keep calling it a crisis, a constitutional crisis.
You really do have a constitutional crisis.
Constitutional crisis.
The constitutional crisis.
Constitutional crisis.
A constitutional crisis.
A constitutional crisis.
That is a genuine constitutional crisis.
Constitutional crisis.
Constitutional crisis.
A constitutional crisis.
Constitutional crisis.
Constitutional crisis.
There's this whole question of, is it a constitutional crisis? Yes, it is. But we can't just keep saying constitutional crisis, constitutional crisis. Nobody knows exactly what that means.
That's a perfect way to end it. Nobody knows exactly what that means. So anyway, pay attention. See if you start hearing and seeing on the news, on the clips, on whatever media source you follow. See if you start seeing the term constitutional crisis being pumped out. And again, this is going to be on the left Democrat side. And it's really against all of the stuff Trump is doing in terms of, what they're going to position as, unilateral presidential overreach. And whether that's through the executive orders or what, they're going to group anything that he does as a constitutional crisis. All right, next up, I want to play for you this 1-minute clip from this gal, Kat Timpf. And this was on the Greg Gutfeld show. It is a Fox show. I swear I don't watch Fox at all anymore. I have a hard time stomaching Fox, MSNBC, or CNN these days. But I saw this clip, And I think it's a really good clip. Again, we're judging the take, remember. So I think this is a really good clip. And again, I think this makes a lot of sense what she says. Give this a listen.
I think it'd be one thing to maybe criticize Elon Musk or criticize DOGE, but to only do that and criticize the way in which maybe Elon talks about the fraud or uncovers the fraud and the waste, and not the waste and fraud itself, reminds me of the guy where if you confront him about you're cheating on me, here's the evidence, and he goes, you went through my phone. How am I supposed to be with you if you can't trust me?
That is so true.
Like, and your reaction to it becomes the conversation.
Right.
It's like, can we not talk about what was found?
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently not. It's the exact same thing, because you think if you find to have some issues with the way it was, but there's no mention from some of these people about what was found, which should bother you.
All right. Again, I mean, I thought that was great. I really did. And she's right. And obviously, I'm absolutely gonna continue to keep an eye on what Elon is doing and all that. And I've talked before that, I do think there's a tremendous level of shadiness to the guy. But her point is excellent. It's like, okay, let's agree there's shadiness. Now let's talk about what is getting uncovered and the incredible waste, fraud, and abuse and all of the just shenanigans / fuckery that he's uncovering. And that's the problem right now. The division is such that you're not going to get anyone, very few on the Democratic left side that are going to say, hey, you know what? I don't really trust Elon. I think he's shady. But hey, this is amazing that he's uncovered, $400 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse, or all of this, fraud when it comes to the USAID situation or whatever, that's the problem right now. Everything is just so divided on political partisan lines that's not happening. All right, next clip. I wanted to play this Tucker Carlson piece that he talked about Ukraine. And I'll tell you, I do think the Ukraine-Russia war is going to come to an end here pretty soon. I think Trump is talking to Putin, and I think that's going to kind of get resolved here in some form or fashion pretty soon. And secondly, I'm seeing Zelensky on different platforms. He went on CNN this past weekend, and he just looks desperate. He looks desperate. He looks nervous, and he basically is like, he's trying to start shit everywhere and try to basically blame everybody and say, hey, I'm telling you, Putin's going to invade everyone. He's going to take over everything. And he's really trying to create his own narrative. So that to me shows that I think the money faucet from the United States that, again, I mean, it's calling a spade, did take place during the past 4 years under Biden. I think that faucet is about to get closed.
Last weekend, I had a meeting in a ski resort in the Alps, which is probably the most expensive town in the world. I was not there to ski, for the record. But the whole town is Ukrainian. All the visitors are Ukrainian. And they're rolling into air maze and dropping $1 million in an afternoon. All through Europe, you see this. The richest people are the Ukrainians. That money is ours. It belongs to me and you and every other American taxpayer. That's where it's going. Second fact, not guess, fact is the Ukrainian military is selling a huge percentage, up to half of the arms that we send them. Half. And I'm not guessing about this. I know that for a fact, not speculation. And a lot of us winding up with the drug cartels on our border. This is a crime, what's happening. Our intel agencies are fully aware of this. You tell me they're not profiting from this. Of course, you think the CIA is not profiting from this? Yes, they are. Can't prove that, but I believe that. What they don't know this. I know this, but they don't know this. They know this. No one is saying it. No American seems aware of this. We're sending these arms to Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's being stolen and sold to our actual enemies. What the?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I mean, I know some people are not a fan of Tucker Carlson, but I'm telling you, the dude is legit and he absolutely brings receipts. He is very thorough in his his investigations and analysis of things. He brings guests on that no other people really do. And, you know, I do put stock and credibility in a lot of the things he talks about. And so, you know, when he's talking about this level of corruption in terms of people in Ukraine, I mean, I believe it. I believe it because, again, I think he's got the resources, he's got the wherewithal, he's got the discernment and the intellect to like figure this shit out. And I think he really does figure it out. Again, I honestly, I hope he has Trump's ear more than I'm seeing. You know, I don't really see them interacting all that much. Obviously, there was talk initially about creating almost a cabinet position for Tucker Carlson. I mean, for a while they were talking about making him vice president, but obviously none of that is happening. But I do hope that Trump listens to him, and I hope he looks to Tucker for really viewpoints that he's not going to get from a Republican person that is in government. All right, next clip I'm going to play for you is from Glenn Greenwald. I've talked about Glenn before a few times. I really do like this guy as well. And this kind of talks about really what is going to happen with this whole Gaza situation. I mean, I think President Trump is obviously kind of ruffled people's feathers the way he's kind of gone about it. Now, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what actually ends up happening, because I will say he did give like a crazy ultimatum, I think like on Wednesday or Thursday, where he's like, if Hamas doesn't release all the prisoners by Saturday at 12 noon or something, all hell is going to break loose. And I don't think that happened. I think they released the prisoners that were part of their ceasefire agreement, and so they were keeping their word with that agreement. But I don't think they released all the prisoners, and then I definitely don't think all hell was released on them by Trump, because I didn't hear anything about, you know, severe military actions either Saturday or Sunday. So give this a listen, though. It's a good take from Glenn.
No one in the Middle East is going to stand by and watch Israel and the United States forcibly remove 2 million Palestinians and put them in refugee camps somewhere in the Middle East so that Jared Kushner can take over Gaza and build new developments and casinos and golf courses on the ocean of Gaza. And the dictators of these countries, despite being dictators, understand that they can't in any way collaborate that or permit that to happen, and certainly aren't going to normalize relationship with Israel while Israel is talking about ethnically cleansing Gaza and annexing the West Bank in conjunction with the United States.
All right. So anyway, part of the reason with all of this that I want to talk about is, you know, Trump really did say, hey, I'm going to bring all these wars to an end. And, you know, obviously we're coming up on 1 month of his being in office. Now, granted, 1 month is nothing, but again, remember, he ran on the campaign promises of, I'm going to end the Russia-Ukraine war. That war would be over in 24 hours. You know, that war would be over before I even took office, you know, and then he made similar statements in terms of what is taking place in the Middle East. And obviously we're 30 days in and they're not over. So that's partially why I think the Russia-Ukraine thing is going to come to an end first. Like, I really do. I think that one's going to come to an end first, and then they're going to continue to figure out kind of what to do in the Middle East. All right, that's it. I'll keep it light if this was considered light. But anyway, we're coming up on 24 minutes. All right, have a great day. Have a great night. Call a spade, and we'll have some more good stuff this week.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.